Roland Bullivant. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for Silwood Technology, and I'm joined today by Nick Porter, who's our Technical Director, who's going to be doing the demonstration, so the bulk of the work a bit later on. Just to let you know, we will also be recording this session, so we will let you have a link to that in due course, so that yourselves or your colleagues can have a listen and a watch as well later. So, Nick, if you're there, could we just move on, please, and then we can get started. So, this is really the focus of the session this afternoon. For those of you who are familiar with SAP or SAP BW, and you're trying to use those applications for data-related projects, the challenge is trying to understand the data model behind or underneath those packages. And I think this quote from Scott Delaney at Hydro Tasmania neatly explains the problem, is that in fact there is no data model available or that SAP make available. So what we're going to do today is hopefully go into a little bit more detail about that challenge, and then give you some information about how Safyr solves this particular problem. And we're going to talk through some case studies, obviously look at sort of overall benefits, and then we're going to show you the product, and obviously there'll be some next actions that you can take, if you like, following on from that. So the big problem that we have is that SAP applications, SAP project information projects rely on good data. Nick, can you move on, please? And thanks. And good data is needed, or accurate data, access to accurate data, is needed for a whole range of different types of projects, from data warehousing, the new term now, data wrangling, BI, master data, data governance, integration, migration, etc. And the big challenge that's always been the case with packages and large systems is, where is that data? How do you actually find it? And especially with the larger packages, this can be extremely difficult. You have a very complex data model underpinning SAP. There's about 90,000 tables before a systems integrator starts to add some or change them. And we have customers, RS Components, for example, whose SAP system has 117,000 tables in it. Also, they're very customized, and there's no tools that are really provided by SAP or any other vendors, for that matter, which make it easy for information professionals to get to grips with that data model and find what they need. So traditionally, what we've done, or what's happened in the industry, there's been a huge amount of manual effort. I suppose you could call it grunt work, just literally trying to find things and then rekey information into other systems, into ETL or data integration tools. Excuse me. People may go searching for documentation. You may go and ask your specialists, who may or may not quite understand what you're looking for, what you're actually asking for. They may not understand the context in which you're looking for things, so they may not give you exactly what you're looking for. You may hire external consultants. Obviously, there's a cost involved in that, and I'll talk about a comparison a bit later between the cost of consultants and the cost of Safyr. We've increasingly found customers who are using Google or Bing or whatever internet search tools to find data models, to try and understand what's behind or what's underneath their SAP system, with the attendant risks of, is it the same version, have they got the same customizations as me, etc., etc. And there's a fair amount of guesswork going on out there. Now, some people, what quite often we get, the question is, or the statement is that, well, my vendor, the company is supplying my integration tools, my ETL tools, my BI tools, or SAP themselves would tell me that they do all this. They provide me with access. Well, to a point they do. What they tend to do is provide a connector to an SAP system. They provide maybe perhaps templates, which you then have to figure out whether those templates are map exactly onto what you have. They may not have the templates for the specific areas that you're interested in, or you get a list of tables and you have to know what to select from them. The problem with it, the challenge with that, is that there is no context. They expect you to know, those tools expect you to know what it is you're looking for. And quite often, the challenge is that if you don't know what you're looking for, you don't exactly know. And if you're a data professional rather than an SAP technology specialist, the chances are you might not know what you're looking for. So what's actually more, what's actually better, or what would be more useful, would be something to provide you with the context, the ability to search and find what you need. Another way that you could potentially look at trying to find how the data models underneath an SAP system are structured is to use the reverse engineering capabilities of products like SAP's own Power Designer, or Irwin, or ER Studio, or IBM tools such as Rational Systems Architect. There's a couple of big problems there. Firstly, they can engineer, but reverse engineer a data model. But the data model is reverse engineered from the relational database itself. So in packaged applications, and particularly in SAP, the rich metadata, the logical information, the relationships between tables, all that useful stuff is not held, it's not stored in the relational database. So these blobs you see on the screen in front of you are representative of what you would get if you tried to reverse engineer an SAP system with a modeling tool. The other problem, of course, is that SAP is a very large system. So it has 90,000 tables plus, as I said earlier. So you would effectively have 90,000 pieces of information, none of which were particularly valuable, none of which would tell you exactly what was in there or how they were linked. And I would guess that any modeling tool would struggle to give you a view of 90,000 tables. You wouldn't be able to print it out on a piece of paper less than the size of a football pitch, I suspect. But the other problem, of course, would be trying to navigate and find anything in there. And of course, again, there's no links, there's no relationships, there's no logical information. So all in all, not a particularly useful way of going about it. And these are not the impact of this delay, this struggle, this bottleneck, if you will, of trying to understand the SAP data model has a number of impacts, a number of consequences. And these are ones that are typically explained to us by our customers. So the main one is that if the project is late, then you get late delivery of the benefits of those projects. Typically the cost may overrun, especially if you're going out and hiring external consultants. You may have delays and backlog of reports. That was a particular problem at Hydro Tasmania. Low productivity, again, a problem there, and at Boeing that I'll talk on later. And if you're not sure, if you're not absolutely certain where you're getting the data from, then there's potential that you have quality issues. And one of the main areas or one of the main problems that our customers talk to us about is that in this so-called data-fueled economy that we now have, I'm not convinced it's too much different from the past, but anyway, the fact that the businesses are dependent upon data, which they've always been, but increasingly dependent on data. If your analytics team, if your data warehouse can't point to where that data's come from, if they can't be certain of its meaning, of its context, then businesses very quickly lose faith in the ability of those teams to deliver the quality that they need. And that's really where Safyr comes in. So Safyr is, as far as we're aware, the only dedicated solution that will help to shorten time to value, i.e. help to deliver those projects on time. What we've found over the years is that actually this sort of source data discovery, source data analysis is the part of a project that's often overlooked or ignored in any sort of detail, and sometimes it comes as a bit of a surprise a bit later on that actually it's going to take weeks or even months to find the data that you need for a data warehouse project or a data migration project. So Safyr is the only dedicated solution. We built the product to help companies shorten the time to value, so to speed up delivery and to reduce the cost of data discovery by reducing the time and the need for external consultants. And also because with Safyr you're always looking at the metadata, the data model in your SAP system as implemented, so including all the customizations that you have, that it improves the accuracy of what's delivered. So what we've, and if you like, the what we do is we put data professionals in control. We give them the tools they need in terms of software for metadata discovery to find what they need when they need it. And importantly, to find it in the context of the project or the task at hand. And what that means is that there's no longer a requirement to go out and hire 4 or 5 consultants or to pester the technical team who've got other things to do, when really it should be a fairly simple job to be able to understand the data model that underpins your application. So we give back that control so they find what they need when they need it in context. And finally, the way we do that. How do we do that? Well, Safyr, Nick is going to explain and demonstrate this, so I'm not going to go into all the functionality of the product. But just as a quick introduction, what Safyr does is to extract the metadata from your SAP system. It takes about 2 hours. And it's as implemented, so it includes all of the customizations you may have had visited upon the data model. Once that task is complete, the wire, the connection to the SAP system is cut, the data model is stored, all that information is stored in the Safyr repository, and then there is a set of very easy to use search, filter, scoping functionalities to allow you to get down to the smaller and smaller groups of tables that are actually relevant to what you need to do. And you can then visualize that information, share it, confirm and communicate that it's actually correct. You can compare different instances of SAP, or you can compare different subsets of SAP if you've got, I don't know, maybe a company you're acquiring and they've got SAP and you want to see, you know, how the two data models comparing if you want to rationalize them or something like that. And then that information can be shared with a variety of tools via either sort of metadata bridges or directly out to modeling tools, spreadsheets, integration tools, etc. So we make that information available for use with other products. So I think in the agenda we now have some case studies. So the first one I'd like to talk about is Hydro Tasmania. They bought the product about 15 months ago now. They went through a process where they had a new SAP implementation. They were replacing a number of legacy applications. That had been complete. They were now implementing business objects with data services. So they sort of expected that everything would work quite smoothly. However, what the BI team found, that they were naturally very unfamiliar with SAP. They went and asked SAP if they could have the data model. It was then told that they were then told it was not available. They then asked their systems integrator if they could start to build some models for them. And the quote, you can read this on the case study of the website. The quote was something like $20,000 or $30,000 per model, and obviously there was, they weren't sure how many models they might need, whether that would be 10 or 15 or 20. So it was a significant amount of money. And then whilst they were doing that, and then they'd had no budget for services, so they started to try and guess or search the internet for models. There was a growing backlog of reports. The business was losing faith, and the BI team was losing productivity, was low on productivity. Eventually, after some searching, they came across Safyr, and having had a quick demonstration and a proof of concept of the product, they implemented it. They got an SAP data model up and running within a couple of hours of implementing the product, which included all their customizations. It's a very fast product to learn. It's about a day's training. And very quickly, they brought the project back on track. And with the price of Safyr, they reckoned that it paid for itself in under 2 models of cost of the systems integrator. So you can work out roughly what Safyr might cost. So they now have no backlog, and the business has an improved trust in the data. So Nick, move on, please. And the key thing here is that they're now able to take a much more agile approach to meeting the demands of the business, and know that they can deliver within acceptable timescales. So those are the key takeaways from there. And as I said, there is a case study available on the website which goes into a bit more detail. The next one I want to talk about is RS Components. So they're a slightly older customer now. They've had Safyr for some time. They had a heavily customized SAP system, as you can see, 117,000 tables, so somebody's been busy. And what they were experiencing was continual project delays whenever they needed to do any integration work or reporting work, that trying to understand the SAP data model was too much of a challenge, and they were ending up doing an awful lot of guesswork and a lot of rework when they found that they weren't getting where they needed to go. So they started, after a period of time, they found Safyr, and they started to use the product to give them the information they needed about their SAP data model, started meeting project deadlines, and a much clearer, much more comprehensive understanding of their SAP data model. They used the product with Irwin for data modeling, and that's their modus operandi. But now what they have is no guesswork, and they're able to communicate more effectively around the business with how data is structured. And they also used the product for JD Edwards to SAP migration. And Jean Ashby said that she was very pleased with the product. Nick, you move on, please. And they were achieving a level of understanding of data in SAP that they previously thought impossible. So I'm conscious of time now, so I just want to go very quickly into the Boeing story. So Boeing are a slightly different way of using Safyr. They're currently implementing SAP. They have multiple, about 120 legacy applications. And so Boeing decided that they wanted to be responsible for the data migration into SAP, and the challenge they had was understanding not where is the data, but where to put it, in very simplistic terms. And that was restricting the lack of understanding of that model. Again, their systems integrator not able to give them that, was delaying the project, and there were communication issues. They found Safyr and started to, once they'd implemented the product, reverse engineered the metadata, started to be able to understand the data model, understand where to put things, improve the communication between different departments, between themselves and the systems integrator, and building the relevant SAP data models was very effective, very quickly. And it's helping them to improve and speed up their data migration. They're using Safyr with ER Studio from Embarcadero, and they're looking at potential future uses of comparing SAP instances for consolidation. So they just bought another company that has SAP, so they're looking at comparing those two instances to consolidate. And as Lauren said in the next slide, that he couldn't have seen that there's no way they could have achieved what they did in terms of without being able to extract the metadata automatically. So you can see it would have taken them thousands of hours. So it's obviously saved them a huge amount of time and money and improved their accuracy. And again, this is a case study. There's a blog about it on our website, and there is some slides and a recording available as well if you let us know if you'd like to see that. So with that, I'd just like to go one more slide and then I'll hand over to Nick. So all of our customers find, and these are the sorts of benefits that our customers find, that we help to reduce cost and increase productivity. Importantly, shorten that time to the value of the project, to delivering the benefits. The product is designed for a rapid return on investment, and it helps to improve data quality across the enterprise. So now I'd just like to hand over to Nick, who will take you through a demonstration, and then I'll come back to you to close off with a couple of slides towards the end. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks very much, Roland. So my name's Nick Porter, and I'm just going to give you a taste, really, of the functionality of Safyr. And I'm going to show you an SAP system where we've already reverse engineered the metadata into the Safyr environment. So as Roland says, that's a case of attaching to the SAP system. We do that by a piece of ABAP or ABAP code that we deliver with the product, and that ABAP code reads a whole set of metadata from the SAP system and loads it into what we call the Safyr repository, which is just a database where we store that set of metadata. And once that reverse engineering has been done, then the real work starts. Your real work starts, if you like, and that is to start to actually look for things of interest. And there are a number of ways of doing that. There are a number of tools within the product for doing that. And we're going to start off with this one here, which we call the multi-object search. So I will show you a little bit later on how you can look just at tables, in base tables, if you like, in the SAP system. But sometimes what you want to do is you want to do the sort of thing you do with Google. You know, you want to do a search and you want to see what comes up, what kind of results you get. And as its name implies, what this tool does is it allows you to do a search across a range of different object types. And when you're doing this kind of search, often you want to do that with some kind of business concept in mind. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to think about customer payment. You know, that's obviously to most organizations, that's a fairly important concept. So I'm going to do a search, like a wildcard search, across this system, looking for any object that's got the string customer payment somewhere in its description. And you can see it comes back with a set of hits. And at the top there are a set of tables. It's found a set of tables in the SAP system that have got the string customer payment in their description. There's a bunch of database views as well, and then we're going to look at these other objects at the bottom. So straight away my eye goes to this one. There's a table, and it's called customer payment history. So if I was doing any kind of project, maybe I'm building a warehouse, or it's to do with data governance, whatever the information management project might be, if I was concerned with customer payment, maybe that's a table that I might be interested in. So what I can do now, if I double click on that table, I'll now dive into the physical structure of that table. I can now see the fields, or the columns, if you like, the database columns that make up that table. So those of you who know SAP will recognize that you have these fairly cryptic technical names for objects. So you can see this table, customer payment history, its technical name at the top there is KNB4. And likewise, the column names are in this first column fairly cryptic, but then the more helpful descriptive names are in this third column here. So I can actually see now a little bit more detail about the sorts of information, the kinds of information that this table stores. And as I click on each column, then you'll also see at the bottom here, up comes a much more detailed description of what the purpose of that column is. Now, all the information that you're seeing here is as described within the SAP system. We're not deriving any of this, we're pulling this information as it's described in the SAP system. So already I can start to get some feeling as, well, is this the sort of table I'm looking for? Is it got the sort of fields I expect? That kind of thing. So let's go back to the results set. And if I go down a bit further, you'll see there is a node here, SAP program tree. So one of the things that we do, in addition to pulling out what you might describe as classic data information, tables, columns, relationships, indexes, that kind of thing, as Roland explained, we also do a lot to put that data in context. And that's really what these bottom sets of nodes are about. It's looking for objects which use the data. So let's look at this one. Obviously there's some things here which are specific to Russia, customer payment analysis Russia. But here's a program, it's an SAP program, and it's customer payment history. And again, if I was trying to understand customer payment in order to do whatever my information management project might be about, that kind of rings all sorts of bells, and I think, oh yes, this could be interesting. And if I double click on that, it will delve into another level of detail. So I can see the program that I've just selected, and that's part of a hierarchy. There's a whole bunch of other programs if I scroll up the hierarchy, and you can see, if I go a little bit further up, it's part of an SAP component, FIGLIS, information system. It's part of the finance module of SAP. If I carry on up yet another level, you can see it's part of the finance general ledger accounting module. And if I'm not going to do it, but if I went up at yet another level, you'll see it's part of the FI, the finance module of SAP. So let's go back down to the actual program. So here's the program, customer payment history, and then each of these blue, these little grid icons, they are a table. So what this is telling me then is that program uses, it references or updates each of the tables in this list. So this is a very powerful where use capability. And that table we started looking at in the list of tables, that's here, maybe not surprisingly, there's again KNB4. So this set of tables is referenced or used by that particular program. And I can do similar kind of searches to find things like T codes, transaction codes. So SAP, those of you who know SAP will probably know it's driven often by these transaction codes. I can look for particular transaction codes, and I can see, very similar to what I'm showing you here, how the programs that those transaction codes belong to use the data. So what I'm going to do now, having now found what looks like a sort of interesting set of tables, what I'm going to do is I'd like to kind of lasso these tables. I want to isolate them. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to add, as it says here, all the tables belonging to the customer payment program, history program, to a subject area, what we call a subject area. So what I'm going to do is create the subject area and populate it all in one go. And I'm not going to be very imaginative in how I name this. I'm just going to call it demo, the subject area. But I could call that subject area whatever I want. And you probably can see in this list, I've got a whole bunch of other subject areas already built. So there's things like asset accounting and inventory management and quality management. In actual fact, for customers, we deliver around 100 pre-built subject areas for Safyr based upon these kind of business functions. But I've made my own, and you can do that. You can make as many subject areas, you can put into those subject areas as many or as few tables as you like. So I've made my own kind of Venn diagram, that grouping of tables, and there's a number of things I can now do with that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to this other way of looking at the metadata. And what this does, this will show me all the tables in the SAP system. So it's one long list of tables, and you can probably see at the bottom there, this is our SAP sandbox, there are nearly 100,000 tables in our system. So rather than seeing all these tables, I'm going to subset it into the subject area that I've just created. So that set of tables is now just appearing in that subset. And I've now got some other additional interesting properties by looking at it like this. I've got the number of related tables. So for each table in the list, I can see the number of related tables. So for instance, this one here has got 847 child tables and it's got 51 parent tables. And I can also see a row count. So at the time we extract the metadata, we also pull out a count of the number of rows in each table. Just bear in mind this is our sandbox, it's not a real system, so I'm sure those of you who run SAP will have a lot more than 98 customers in your own system. And sometimes just having arrived at this is enough information for customers, and I'm not given sort of time constraints, I'm not actually going to do this, but what I could do is I could say, well, I'd like to export that table list, the properties for that list of tables, and I can choose what properties I export, the name and the number of rows and that kind of thing. And I could push that out into a CSV file and then load it into something like Excel and do some more work with it. But what we can also do is we can export that subject area. So I can choose one or more subject areas, and I can export it into a range of other tools. And lots of our customers are using Safyr alongside some kind of modeling tool like Irwin or Power Designer or ER Studio. And we also have a built-in, it's fairly simple, but we have a built-in diagramming capability to allow you to rapidly make a data model of that set of tables. So based upon the set of tables I chose, I can now see a sort of quick view of what the data model would look like. There's lots of features I can use in the product to sort of change the way this model looks. You know, I could show the model at physical level, so I'll see the technical names. At the moment, I'm just showing primary and foreign keys in this model. I could show all the attributes. So if I was to push that out into something like Irwin or Power Designer or ER Studio, very similar result. Obviously, the style will be a little bit different, and those products are full modeling environments. They're not just a diagramming tool like what I'm showing you here. So, so hopefully you're getting some kind of feel for how you go about using the product. It's about taking the very large amount of tables and relationships that you find in an SAP system and bringing those down into more manageable groups, and doing that without having to be an SAP expert. My background is data modeling. I'm not an SAP experienced person. My background is a data modeler, and I always like to think that I can use my general business knowledge to find things in a similar way to what I've already shown you to date. Another thing you can do with the product is to do comparisons, and Roland mentioned this in his session. And you can compare metadata from different instances. And when I was doing that export to the diagrammer, there is another format we can export into called comparison file format. And that puts the metadata in the subject area into a format which is designed for comparison. So what I've already done is I've done that for that set of customer payment tables, but from two different and slightly differing SAP instances. So if I show you the compare capability, you'll get a feeling for what can be done. So it's two sets of similar tables that we're going to compare. So imagine that these are coming from two different locations maybe, or it could be two different SAP versions that we're comparing. We want to understand what the differences are between those two. And it's entirely practical to do this for full SAP systems. You can do a comparison between all 90,000 plus tables in two systems and look at the differences. The differences could be quite large, so it's probably not the best approach, but the product is robust enough and has enough horsepower to allow you to do that kind of thing. So the idea is you choose these two sets of tables to compare, and then you can use these checkboxes to decide what granularity of comparison to do. How much, what are the differences that you want to see between the two systems? And as you can probably see, I've got things like log missing entity. So what that means is, if I have that check on, if it finds entities, tables, if you like, that are in one system but not in the other, it will identify that. If I switched it off, it will only compare like entities with the same name in both systems. Likewise, I can do that with attributes, the columns of a table. I can do things like I could compare the data type, the database data type. These are actually from different SAP systems on different RDBMS platforms, so I've chosen to switch that off. I could compare relationships between those. So let's just leave that set as they are, and then I do the comparison. And first of all, I've got at the top a little bit of information about the two systems that I'm comparing. And then I've got the differences. So in the next node of the tree, I've got the differences. So let's look at the first set. And there is a table called ADMI files. And on that one, there are some data type differences. So on one system it's int4 10 0, on the other one it's just int4. On this particular table, BKPF, there are a set of attributes which exist in the second model, but don't exist at all in the first model. So obviously, quite important, if you were doing anything like a warehouse, for instance, if you were doing some kind of ETL work to pull data out of the system, knowing that there are some attributes in one of the systems that don't exist in the other one could be quite crucial. This one here, on this particular attribute here, you can see that there is a label difference. The descriptive name of the attribute on the first system is status of transfer. In the second system is it's called data transfer status. And we look a bit further down. There's a Z table or a Z table that's been added to the first system. So you can see on the first system there's Z or Z, as we say in the UK, ABW01 table, and that doesn't exist in the second system at all. So that the functionality of that program we looked at earlier on has been extended by the particular site, and they've added their own custom table to that functionality. Okay, so I could save this if I wanted to into something like a CSV and push this down into Excel and then do some more work on the system. That's pretty much what I wanted to show you, and I'm conscious that we're coming up to the end of our session now. So I'm going to hand back to Roland to wrap up, and then if anybody's got any questions, perhaps you could ask that using the chat feature of the product. Roland.
Thanks, Nick. So if you just put the PowerPoint slide back up, then I can talk to that. Thanks. So hopefully what we've been able to explain and show you this afternoon is just giving you a brief flavour, if you will, of the capabilities of Safyr, really helping to make that job of understanding the SAP model both possible and doable without a huge amount of time or manual effort. And this is how our customers use the product to deliver that level of information. And I particularly like this quote from Brian Farish of AMD. Well, he was at AMD, he's moved on now, but after he'd started to use Safyr for reverse engineering SAP metadata, he said he was grieving for the lost years without these tools. And I can certainly see how that would be the case, that you could be working, doing all this manual work, and trying to figure out how these applications are structured from a data point of view, and now finding that there's actually a tool out there that enables you to do it very quickly and easily could be a little bit upsetting. But anyway, that's the final quote I have. All it remains for me now to do is to say what do you do next if you want to move on, if you want to talk to us some more. So we have some. We're delighted to continue the conversation with you. So please, if you would like to book a call with us just to explore how we might help you understand a little bit more about what it is you're trying to achieve, your project, or the challenges you've got. We can arrange a private, one-to-one demonstration, or private webinar, if you will, with your colleagues, if that's something that would be useful. We do find that Safyr is something new, it's something different, so quite often it does need. It's good to have a few people to look at the product, because there's actually nothing that does quite the same thing on the market, as we said earlier. And there's also the opportunity, if you would like to download a free trial, if you go to silwoodtechnology.com, all of those options are available. And alternatively, you could drop us an email at info@silwoodtechnology.com, or even pick up the phone and call us, and we'd be happy to talk to you. So, Nick, are there any questions? I've not seen any coming through, so we may be finished for today.
I think we must have done such a good job, Roland, that nobody's asked any questions.
Okay.
So,
all right. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon. everybody, and please do continue the conversation with us if you would like to learn more. And with that, I would just like to say thank you very much and wish you the compliments of the season as well. So, thank you.